Hello everyone, this video will cover Module 2. Module 2, we are still getting into just kind of how to approach writing assignments. We're not quite to the first essay assignment yet. So this first module here, the first couple of modules here are really just getting you into the class and kind of preparing you for the process that we'll go through. We always start with pre-writing and taking a look at like how to approach a writing assignment, how to pick a topic for an assignment, how to think about ideas for that topic, that kind of thing. And so that's what you're going to be practicing in this module. So you can see you have three things to do. One of them is a quiz and the other two are writing assignments. So this first one here is a pre-writing journal. Now we aren't quite to an essay yet. So the one thing I want you to remember about this pre-writing journal is you are not going to write an essay about this topic that you pick, okay? It's just for purposes of practicing the pre-writing techniques. So we've got this chapter that we're looking at is called Invention. And then you get into the patterns textbook. If you haven't yet, you want to make sure that you can do that. But this chapter 2 invention, this is where we're going to spend a lot of time here at the beginning of the semester. So the second chapter really goes over like how to get into the assignment itself. Like, what are you going to be writing about? How do you analyze the writing assignment? And then what sort of limits do you need to set for yourself right away so that you don't write something that doesn't match the criteria? And so we're going to be looking at some different techniques here. So this assignment here, after you've done the invention readings, the chapter is divided into like pre-writing techniques and then how to develop a thesis. So we're looking at both sections there. This first part is the invention readings, and then you're doing the pre-writing journal. So the journal is you just open up a Word document and you're going to do the exercises from the textbook. So it sounds pretty simple, but students for whatever reason tend to get really confused for this one. So you want to make sure that you're following along. So starting on page 37 is the first exercise that we're going to be looking at. And so we're looking at exercise 4. We're kind of starting in the middle of the exercises for a reason. So pretend like you're writing an essay. And you need to pick some of the topics off of this list. So 3 or 4 of these specific topics that you want to write, you could write an essay about. I would pick something that you have a little bit of understanding of or some personal experience with. That way it just makes it easier to write about. So a lot of students have been picking cell phones in the classroom. Those students who are already high school students, from my experience, the high schools I'm working with, almost all of them have really strict cell phone policies now. So that could be something that you might want to write about. Or maybe, job interviews, you just try to get a job or whatever. So it doesn't matter. You pick one, pick about 3 topics off of this list. Then what you're going to do, you start your Word document, and for those 3 topics, you're going to generate 3 questions about them. So the questions, you want to use these, they're called questions for probing, and it sounds kind of weird, but questions for probing basically gets you a more specific answer. So if your topic is cell phones in the classroom, you might ask yourself, like, what are some problems with cell phones in the classroom, right? So what are, how are cell phone policies being defined? So we could look at like, how is it defined? You might look at, what causes it. Like, so your question then would be that you write out would be, what causes more strict cell phone policies in the classroom? So you're going to write out a question that would lead to a more specific answer. So that you're going to write out 3 questions for each topic. If you want to answer the questions in a few words, that's fine. Most of the time students don't yet, because that's what we're doing the free write for in the next exercise. So that's the first exercise. 3 topics. Each topic has a question, has 3 questions underneath, right? So once you're done with that, then you're going to go to exercise 5, which is asking you to do a free write. So you're going to look over what free writing is, and then you're going to actually do one. Free write is a continuous, a timing of writing. So you're going to just set a timer, 5 minutes, and type. Anything that comes to mind when you think of one of the topics that you put in exercise 4, or the questions that you came up with for exercise 4 for that topic, you're just going to write about as many things as you can think of within that 5 minutes. So just keep going and going and going until your 5 minutes is up. It does not matter whether or not you have good grammar. It doesn't matter whether anything makes sense. It doesn't matter whether you stay on topic, as long as you're just writing continually. And you'll notice for the pre-writing journal at the bottom, I put this note here that you have to have naturally occurring grammar errors in a free write. Like, it's not a free write unless there are errors. This is like the only time I'm ever going to say this about a writing assignment. If you don't have errors, you did it wrong. So want to make sure that you just keep that in mind. Perfect grammar gets you a 0. This is like the only time that happens for any writing assignment. Perfect grammar equals 0. You have to have errors in a free write because we do not type perfectly, especially when we're trying to get that like free flow of writing. So once you're done with that free write, then you're going to do the next free write, which is a free write about your exercise 5. So you're just going to keep going. So you pick something specific from exercise 5 and do a second free write. So we're trying to narrow down the topic. And then you're going to do some brainstorming techniques here. The one I want you to focus on is actually on the next page, which is called clustering. So clustering is where you create one of those maps with all of these circles and lines. You can do it in Word if you want to, or you can do it just like hand draw it and then take a picture and then insert the picture into your file. That's fine. But basically what you're going to do is take your exercise 6 free write and do a cluster map of it. So you're creating that, grouping of ideas and that creating how they would all go together, what's related to each other, that kind of thing. So all of those together, so all 4 exercises are going to be one after another in your Word document, and then you're just going to submit it to this file or submit it to this assignment. So like I said, it's going to take you a little while to complete all 4 of them. Most students make it harder than it needs to be though. So just keep in mind that you're not writing the essay about it. You're just doing those, you're just practicing those techniques. So after you're done with that, then you're going to read over the thesis statement readings, which is still in the textbook, looking at developing a thesis. There's plenty of information about writing a thesis statement. And then the thesis statement quiz just gives you examples of thesis statements, and you get to decide whether or not it's a good thesis based on what you've read about thesis statements. And then the last thing you're going to do is the next mindful reading exercise. So we've got 5 total in the class, and this one is going to have you look at some techniques for reading. So we've already thought about like what was a difficult thing and an easy thing to read. Now we're going to practice this skimming techniques. And skimming is an incredibly useful tool for reading at the academic level, because you're going to get into classes that are going to require you to read so much, and you're never going to be able to get through all of it in a week or in 2 days until the next class. And it's going to be it's really going to hurt your brain trying to get through all of it. And so developing a good skimming habit where you can pick up on what's essential as you read through something is really important. So you're going to practice on just a page out of a textbook or out of the mindful reading book, or something else. If you have a book that you're just reading, that's fine. Nonfiction's best. Practice on that, and then you're going to skim 3 movie reviews and see how much did you get out of it. Could you describe it to someone else based on the skimming, that kind of thing. So you're going to include both of your responses in your document and then submit that as the assignment. So if you have questions during the week, let me know. Like I said, we're still just kind of in that pre-writing, understanding what's the process for writing an essay kind of thing. And then in the next modules when we're going to get into actually writing an essay, what the first essay is. So if you have questions, send me an email. Otherwise, have a great week.